With us as we head up to 36 minutes past 8 o'clock on the midweek edition of the South African Morning. Let's talk about new cars for a moment, shall we? Automotive Business Council Naamsa has issued the second quarter review of business conditions for the motor vehicle manufacturing industry. It all sounds very complicated. Essentially what this is are we seeing more new vehicles that have been sold in 2020 and 2021? I don't want to give the story away, so let's speak to the CEO of Naamsa. It's Mr. Mikel Mabasa joining us. Mr. Mikel Mabasa, good morning to you. And I could have told viewers the numbers, we could have spoken about exports, but I want to leave that to you. Good to have you with us. Can we talk about new car sales since COVID-19 or thereabouts? How are we looking, up or down?
Gareth, the audio is very faint. I'm really battling to hear you.
Okay, let me try again, Mike. I'm sorry, I hope it's better. I'm going to try and raise my voice as well while we see if we can't push our levels up. Hopefully you can hear me now. New car sales, last year, this year, how are we looking, up or down during a COVID year?
Well, absolutely. So this year in 2021, we are very excited that we've seen an upward trend compared to last year, because remember, first half of 2020 was a very depressing period, because that's the period where we've seen hard lockdown and we've seen also a very big drop in vehicle sales in South Africa. Since January up until the end of June this year, we've really seen a very impressive upswing, and we are very, very happy with the performance of the first quarter and also of the second quarter of this year. And we are hoping that the third quarter will obviously be even far better. Obviously, without necessarily having challenges, we've had obviously a number of challenges also in the first half of this year, but certainly a far better first half compared to last year.
So new vehicle sales up on the local market are up at the moment as well. I can't help but wonder, Mike, help me unpack this. I understand a little bit about the export industry for vehicles, but I can't imagine that the looting we saw down in Durban, remembering that a lot of our cars leave Durban and other harbours for international shores, and the Transnet cyber attack, that must have had something to do with the export sales.
Well, look, exports plays a very important role in the automotive industry. 64% of what we are producing in South Africa today goes out of the country as exports. So we're selling less vehicle in the country than we actually sell, as exports. We're exporting our vehicles to 147 different markets around the world. And this is a very big vote of confidence to us as a country that we are certainly producing very good, high quality vehicles that are sought after internationally. And we are very proud of that, achievement as a country. Certainly the events we've seen in July have had an impact on our export business. Because we were certainly not be able to export quite a number of those particular vehicles during those 2 weeks of disruptions in KwaZulu-Natal, primarily because many of our exporters or vehicles manufacturers are actually exporting through the Durban port, and that Durban port was obviously impacted quite significantly by the disruptions. And it's not just exports, we've also seen a slump in terms of imports, because we're bringing quite a number of vehicles into South Africa as imports, and those imports were also impacted negatively by the disruptions we've seen as a result of the unrests.
Mike, it's also worth remembering as well that we're looking at 2021 versus 2020. 2020 itself would have been a lower base, which we're comparing it to now. As we drive our cars a little further down the road, are we going to see a protraction for a couple of years to come? I mean, I would estimate between a year or two for a full recovery from today onwards.
Well, look, our current projections suggest to us that we certainly are going to be going back at least to the 2019 levels by 2023. So it is obviously going to take us another 2 years or so to be able to get back to 2019. Because remember, in 2020, we've actually dropped almost 20 years. We retrogressed almost 20 years back, because the numbers that we recorded in 2020 are the same numbers that we actually recorded in the year 2000. So we are hoping that at least by 2023, we would have at least cycled back to 2019, so that we can then be able to accelerate our performance going forward from there.
And just before I let you go, any other concerns for your industry off the back of the numbers that we're seeing now? We know obviously that many factories around the world were affected by supply chain management problems, parts for vehicles, other ports around the world being affected and closed down. So lastly, briefly if you can, what other concerns do you have for 2021, Mike?
Well, look, I think the biggest concern we have certainly is investor confidence, because remember, all the manufacturers that we have in South Africa are multinational companies, and each time they obviously hear and see some of the things we've seen in Durban and also parts of Gauteng in July, that obviously dampens very, very hugely investor confidence, because there are many other markets where these manufacturers can be able to move into in order for them to be able to manufacture vehicles. So we really want to be able to restore investor confidence, and we are working very tirelessly to talk to many of our manufacturers, not only locally but also globally, so that we can really be able to make sure that we re-energize them to be able to invest in South Africa and obviously to expand their current production capacity, because as you know, Gareth, we are currently now recalibrating our manufacturing plants so that we can be able to gear them up so that we can really be able to prepare for the manufacturing of electric vehicles also in South Africa, because internal combustion engines, which we are currently producing in South Africa, in the next 10 years, those technology will no longer be obviously in the market at all. So we want new investments to come into the country, and we are definitely working very hard to re-energize investor confidence so that we can be able to recalibrate our manufacturing lines as quickly as possible.
And also to make us as green as possible in our automotive industry. I'm going to, for the moment, say thank you, Mr. Mike Mabasa, CEO, National Association of Automobile Manufacturers of South Africa, joining us this morning here on the South African Morning. Something of a recovery for the automotive industry, 40.1% increase as a recovery increase from 2020 to 2021 for new vehicles and that market here in South Africa.